Would you look at that? Another one has finally reached enlightenment. What's up, guys? I'm Hunter here, and here we are to do a breakdown/review for chapter 265 of Jujutsu Kaisen, which is known as the decisive battle. I'm kidding. It's known as that day. And now, after reading the chapter a couple times and properly thinking about what that means, that kind of has 15 different meanings. I'm lying, it's 3. I'm lying, it's 2. I'm lying, it's 1. It just means that day, I promise. I won't get extra philosophical in this chapter, I swear. I promise I won't. I promise. I'll never break a promise. Pinky promise. You're looking at the thumbnail right now, aren't you? You can't see that I don't have my hands up at all. But with that being the case, let's not waste any more time and let's hop right into it. Heading me, are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go. What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do mean to have it on me and keep it on me at all times. It ain't another fun fact. Yuji and Sukuna, our main character and our main villain. At least at this point. Once again, while a deep, uncomfortable, I'm quite comfortable with it, but I know a deep, uncomfortable part of me is hoping and itching. I'm worse than the Gojo Glazers at this point. I'm worse than the Nobara. Well, maybe not worse than Nobara fans. I've seen Nobara fans still claiming she's alive after this chapter. Still. Y'all scare me with your dedication. I respect it. Don't get me wrong. It's very impressive. But it awakens a bit of a primal fear. Y'all, it's been years. Years. Plural. At least the Gojo Glazers have an excuse. It hasn't been a full year yet. It's getting close. Getting real close. But it hasn't been a full year yet. Nobara fans, I think it's literally been nearly half a decade. She was gone before the 100. Okay, I think that's wrong. I think she's right after 100. But still. Y'all scare me. But with it being the case, part of me is still hoping on my Nobara fan type beat, on my Gojo Glazer type beat, that big Jaku, the Jaku Jacker in me, still hoping 100% that he gonna come back, whether it be through Yuta, whether it be through Rika, whether it be through the merge. Some is hoping, but at this point, especially since Gege recently, and admittedly, you can kind of take whatever Gege says in interviews with a bag of salt. They've contradicted so much of what they said in their interviews, some recent, some old, and I get contradicting old interviews. Some recent interviews, they end up switching and changing their mind all the time. So honestly, I trust very little of what they say. But they have claimed recently, I think it was at Jump Festa this year, this is the final arc. The Shinjuku Showdown's it. We're done. We're in the end game. There is no hypothetical arc after this. And of course, you could say maybe the merger still falls in Shinjuku Showdown. Maybe a Kenny Revival does fall in Shinjuku Showdown. Maybe this, that, and the third. And obviously, Hikari versus Ume hasn't wrapped up. So maybe there's going to be something crazy arc-wise that happens after this. But I doubt it. Gege tried to end the manga last year. Somehow it ended up running for another one. So I smell the end coming near. And honestly, I don't think a Jaku revival makes sense. And as much as I love Jaku, I'm going to be the first one to tell you that the dynamic between Jaku and Itadori is basically non-existent. It's there, literally biologically, but character-wise, it's mostly non-existent. There's a little bit of it based on what happens at the end of Shibuya, but that's literally it. It's mostly one-sided from Kenjaku's side too, since considering Kenjaku does care about Itadori to some degree. In more ways than just, oh, look at my little experiment boy running around being strong. But, with that being the case, the reason I bring all that up is because Itadori and Sukuna are two characters who ultimately kind of have to end the series together. While I was hoping for my big Jaku Kopi and I was hoping for something, I'll readily admit, every single Itadori investor, and like I said, I held some stock, but I wasn't as much of a major Itadori investor as many others were, and every single Sukuna investor out there, every single Sukuna stockholder, both of y'all, dividends, because y'all knew the truth. From round start, it was going to be this. And ultimately, it's why I kind of think the merger's not happening. On top of a bunch of different reasons I said in other videos. I really don't think a Jaku revival's happening. I don't think a Gojo's revival's happening. I think we're just done. Of course, Once again, there are still the weird outliers. Like, there is still hard versus Urume, but it just doesn't matter. I've mentally come to accept that the fight just doesn't matter. Not in Gege's, but I wouldn't. What are the chances that Gege actually forgot? I doubt it. Once again, with Toto's return, I kind of refuse to think that Gege forgets about anything. And that is such a strange outlier to keep so open-ended. But I really don't smell much following this. So this chapter and how much it does for Yuji Tsukuda's dynamic, and how it evolves it in a way, and devolves it in a way, but realistically, the evolution far outseeds the de-evolution, or, is that a word? Sometimes that's not a word. Devolution isn't a word either. There's something. Something happens with this chapter and their dynamic that I really, really appreciate. So allow me to go into a full, long, unabated yap session as we hop into chapter 265 of that day. On rare occasions, dueling sorcerers bond with each other. I think it's a side effect of cursed energy arising from human emotion. But this is different. What's going on? Is this your domain? So, Yuji Itadori has done something weird, and actually, let me finish this little phrase here. I'll finish, in fact, everything except for this bottom part on this first page. How should I know? I pulled it out in the middle of mortal combat. I just want to talk, so hear me out. So, Sukuna reveals something intriguing. It's a phenomenon that he himself doesn't fully understand, but he does bring up the idea that sorcerers can bond. Now, bond has a lot of meanings, like James Bond, but I'm assuming the bonding Sukuna's referring to is every single time that, well, I say every single time. He only did it twice. Hey, but one time's a mistake, two times a pattern. But with Jogo and Kashimo, those times where he boop, boop, into their realities, quote unquote, possibly their own innate domains, and spoke with them. I'm assuming that's what Sukuna was referring to. And based on the fact that he doesn't acknowledge it as something that he does exclusively, I'd like to assume anyone could really do it if their understanding of cursed energy and their connection to cursed energy is actually that good. So that's an interesting factor. Sukuna does recognize something similar to this phenomena, but that phenomena is not this phenomena. So, intriguing. Part of me does wish that we got to see more characters do it then. If this is something that can happen between two sorcerers who are intensely... That's not like that. But two sorcerers who are intensely... Two sorcerers that are intensely battling, alright? If that's something that can happen more often, I do kind of wish we got to see a bit more of that. Could have been neat. Though I do get keeping it exclusive to Sukuna does highlight how good he is with cursed energy and how deeply he's tied into the system. And I do like that the fact that cursed energy does rise from emotion is a big factor in that phenomena. And it does make Sukuna all the more interesting as a character, considering we know he doesn't really feel much. He's not empty. He's not devoid of feeling. We've seen the man have fun before. We've seen him smile. We've seen him laugh. We've seen him do a whole bunch of things. But, like, considering how blasé Sukuna is about everything, it's shocking that he has so much negative emotion, because remember, that's where cursed energy comes from. He says just emotion here, but it is specifically negative emotion, rage, hatred, depression. Like a lot of that is what produces cursed energy. So it's interesting that Sukuna has so much of it when he seems so blasé and calm about everything. But with that being the case, Yuji has done something different. Now, this being Yuji's domain is still a possibility. In the TCBs, it was a little bit more vague, but with Yuji admitting that he kind of just did it, like he just yelled domain expansion, threw up a random hand sign, and hoped for the best, it does seem like this could be Yuji's domain. And especially considering the two do retreat into combat. But the weird thing about this possibly being Yuji's domain is that this is the first domain to do this. Like, ever. And you may be wondering, Pencil Man, what do you mean by this? And I mean, actively changing the form and function of both characters? Like, remember, whether it be Unlimited Void, Malevolent Shrine, whatever Kenjaku's domain is called, I forget, Horizon of the Captivating Skanda, Coffin of the Iron Mountain, even Deadly Sentencing, and Hikari's domain, Idle Death Gamble, all that. Yeah, none of those, change the appearance of the characters who are trapped in it. Especially major changes. You could argue that technically Yuji's changes are normal, quote unquote. As in, the only thing he's really missing are the spiral eyes, which he does get later this chapter, and the The elbow things that went unexplained. A lot of people keep telling me that he just got those from the blood manipulation kids, like his siblings that he nibbled on. But I don't know until it's confirmed. I would just like to know, because they take why does it? Why does them being the blood manipulation siblings mean that they don't take damage from Cleveland Dismantle? They're the only parts of Yuji that went undamaged. It's so weird. Gay, please. Once again, Gay could probably will not explain that. It's just going to haunt me and bother me specifically. That never gets explained, considering they just take no damage. Unless I'm mistaken. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. But go back through the entirety of Yuji fighting. He showed up in 238. You could skip a decent chunk because we had the Kenjaku versus Takaba fight right after 238. But go through the entire run. I'm confident in saying that those arms never take damage from Dismantle. It's weird that they do, but it never happens. So that's why I'm so intent on them being explained, because it seems weird. But with that being the case, Yuji only lost that, and the Spiral Eyes, which he gets back later. But that's just not Sukuna, like at all. Like, sure, Yuji and Sukuna look alike, but like they don't look alike, if you know what I'm talking about. Because this is Sukuna without his face mask. This is Sukuna without his extra arms. This is Sukuna without his extra bulk. He's just reflected in Yuji. Down to his clothes. Like, everything has changed about Sukuna. And a decent chunk has changed about Yuji, considering how intact he is and how non-mutated he is. Which is strange. No other domain innately changes the appearance of somebody. And I can't say this is the reflection of Sukuna's soul, because if it was just the full reflection ripped straight out of the body of Megumi Fushiguro, then he would be in his traditional Heian era clothing. Just like his soul is reflected back when he was in Yuji's body. But no, he's very specifically in Yuji's clothes as well. And once again, it's revealed by the end of this chapter that it's not like Yuji actually did straight up that this soul dismantle slice that was imbued into his domain. It's not like he immediately cut Sukuna free of Fushiguro. No, Fushiguro's still being held hostage by Sukuna, which means their souls are still fused. So if anything, he should look like Meguna. If we're going to take, his soul reflects the body that he's in, and thusly Yuji ripped him out and pulled him into him. So this domain is already weird, if it is the domain. And that's the question. If this is Yuji's domain, then it has super duper unique properties that are exclusive to Yuji and Yuji only, out of like the 12 plus domains we've seen in the series. But if this isn't Yuji's domain, then it's just even weirder. We know Yuji's able to, weirdly enough, falsify memories, quote unquote. This happens with Todo and it happens with Choso, but once again, take it with a grain of salt. Gege in interviews has said that that's not a curse technique or anything like that. Who knows? But with that being the case, Sukuna does bring up the alternate idea: is this your domain? He didn't say domain expansion, he just says domain. Is this Yuji's innate soul? That's also a question, considering we don't actually have enough evidence of what innate souls look like. Notably, domain expansions are a reflection of techniques. Coffin of the Iron Mountain, Unlimited Void, Malevolent Triumph, they're all just manifestations of the techniques. Meanwhile, Yuji has two techniques. He has Shrine, and he does have Blood Manipulation now. But I wouldn't say Blood Manipulation is exactly rectified here. Rarely a Shrine either. Though they do go to a Shrine later, so maybe. But still, it's a very weird predicament we find our two characters in, and I'm intrigued to see what it leads to. Ultimately, I do actively hope that Sukuna does get his 4 arms back. He can stay in Yuji body, I guess, but like, give him his original form back. It's neat. I want to see a callback to the Grasshopper versus Yuji. That's the main thing I'm looking for. So ultimately, I do hope he does get his original form back, but I do think the vagueness and weirdness about the domain and their appearances and how it possibly reflects their soul, doesn't reflect their soul, a lot of weirdness is just on this opening page. And with that being the case, let's actually hop further into the chapter itself than the first page. I've been yapping for way too much. We see that Yuji kind of just starts going on a little bit of a tour. Oh, look! Onikenbai! What the heck is that? Don't worry about it. English! Don't worry about it. Only the locals know. And I'm not a local, so I have no idea what it is either. But, one thing I'll say. Should I say it now, or should I save it for later? I'll save it for later, because I've been on this first page for too long. So let's actually go further through the chapter before I mention it. But it is an underlying factor. It's an underlying factor. I mentioned in the spoiler discussion. You may have a general idea of what I'm going to mention if you saw the spoiler discussion. But, with it being the case, we see Yuji say, I was born in Sendai, but Gramps had to move for work. I lived here until I was 6 or 7 when I went back to Sendai. Not long ago, I came back for the first time in almost 10 years for the funeral of a friend of my grandpa's. I didn't expect to see it so run down. It wasn't completely abandoned, though. Well, not that I was surprised. To be honest, was what I was expecting, so it didn't make me feel anything. Remember this. Remember this for later. But note how Sukuna doesn't respond. If Gramps had died first, would his friend have come to his funeral? So, Yuji brings up a common situation for a lot of people. Home is a blessing, and it's also not necessarily a place. Home can be many things. I forget. There's a movie. It's a Disney or Pixar movie that specifically talks about home. And I know that I think not the movie Home. I know there's like a movie actually called Home. It's an anime movie. I'm not thinking of that one. Home is where the heart is. What movie am I thinking of? Home is what you make it. But essentially, the idea of one's home and the idea of change from the loss of home. Many people have had to move in their lives because of circumstances beyond their control. And Yuji acknowledging that and the simultaneous mortality and immortality of certain places, or lack thereof, is a big part of that. Things change all the time. And while change is typically a good thing, typically things change when they're bad, or could be better, but there are a lot of times where dilapidation and loss and negativity can settle into an area. And I think Yuji openly acknowledging that he wasn't surprised by that is a start of Yuji's whole understanding of the negativity that's always been in his life, to some degree. And we see Sukuna go quiet. He doesn't initially acknowledge what Yuji says here, and I do think that's important. But also, he brings up the idea of a flip scenario. If Yuji's grandfather had died first, would his friend have come to his funeral? What kind of impacts you leave on people? It's very important. Of course, first impressions matter the most. If I had to give anybody any advice ever, always make a good first impression. Whether that be making sure you present yourself properly, whether that be smiling at people, whether that be giving a firm handshake or talking well, articulating yourself properly. Always give a good first impression, because there are two things people remember about you the most, and two things most people remember the most. The first thing that you ever done with them or ever did, and the last thing you ever did with them or ever do. The middle, it matters. Not as much, though. A good first impression can go a very, very long way. But ultimately, there still is the idea of connection and whether or not the impressions you've left on people are enough to influence them to do things later in life. Clearly, Yuji's grandfather's friend left enough of an impression on Wasuke Itadori that he did come back for him. That he did travel all the way back to Sendai in order to make sure that his friend got a proper burial and stuff like that, and to be there. But Yuji wonders if the same case was vice versa. And he's obviously this obviously ties into Yuji's own worry, his own original desire. If you'll remember, Yuji kind of just wanted to make sure he didn't die alone. Because remember what happened to Wasuke. The only person who was there when he died was his grandson. No one else. No friends. No other family. Nothing. And that led to Yuji's original desire to want to make sure he died a good death. And make sure other people die good deaths. Considering he feels like he wasn't able to give his grandfather one. And he ends up questioning that here. And remember this for later, because death does play a massive part in Itadori Yuji's life. And note how here in the beginning, the dilapidation, the loss, the change, and death is being held in an uncertain and scary regard for Itadori. It's minor, but it's going to matter a whole lot later when we get into deeper concepts and discussions of death between Yuji and Sukuna. But we do get to see that the two do keep on walking. I always played in this park. Most of the playground equipment's gone. I got my foot stuck in the swing once and thought I was going to die. It was bound to happen. I washed off my toy slime here after I dropped it in the sand, and I cried because it all went down the drain. Morning glories. Oh, morning glories. Those are See, I don't even know how to say. Hydragnia? Hydra... See, I would fight it, but I ain't good enough. Hydragnia. Hydragia. Gosh darn it. How do I say it? How do I say it, Google? Help me. Pronunciation. Help me, Google.
Hydrangea.
Morning glories. Those are hydrangea, you fool. I know, my bad. I only started noticing them after moving to Sendai. But they sure... Oh, whoops. I said he moved. I said he moved away from Sendai. They're moving to Sendai. But they grow a lot around here. Who decides what gets planted in public spaces? Wait a minute. You know the names of flowers, huh? You know the names of flowers, huh? Sorry, I'm struggling on my delivery right now. But Yuji is once again just dragging Sukuna about. And here's the point I want to mention it, considering there's a point I'm going to talk about separately. And I do want to mention it now before I forget it, because I've done that before. I do that all the time in videos. I say, I'll mention something later. And then in editing, I'll listen for when I was supposed to mention it later and realize I never did. Yuji and Sukuna are walking around. Sukuna's entertaining Yuji on this concept. We know he does not have to. Or at least he can attempt to resist entertaining Yuji. Because we'll see, at the very end of the chapter, Sukuna tweaks out. Sukuna tweaks out drastically. And implies that he's going to mink. He fights back, he tweaks out, he does all this, he does all that. So, Sukuna is choosing to walk with Yuji, and talk with Yuji, and listen to Yuji. Admittedly, he doesn't get annoyed with it, but he does. And you know what that shows? At least to me. I've heard hot debate on this, considering I mentioned this before in the spoiler discussion. At least to me, this shows that on some level, Yuji Itadori has finally gained something either close to or the equivalent of respect from the King of Curses known as Ryomen Sukuna. Why? Maybe wondering absolutely why. You may be like, Pencil Man, do I have to fight you? Why? Because Yuji Itadori is able to walk and talk, and Sukuna does not attack him. Sukuna does not cut him off early. Sukuna engages with him. He could have just let Yuji be wrong when he said morning glories, but he goes out of his way to correct him with hydrangea. He goes out of his way to correct him on a meaningless fact of a meaningless part of life. Sukuna's engaging with Yuji. And not in the same way that he engaged with Yuji, where he would consistently punch him and beat him and kick him around. Like, not in that way. But no, he's actively engaging with Yuji as a person. The only other people we've seen him engage in some way like this are Jogo, technically, Gojo, and Kashimo. He didn't really engage with Ryu. He sliced him to pieces. He didn't really engage with any sources from the past. He sliced him to pieces. Technically, he engaged with Urume and Kenjaku as well. But still, those are very powerful characters. So Yuji has risen to an echelon, to a point where Sukuna's actively willing to engage with him. And considering how much of this narrative has spent drilling into our heads, and even Yuji's, that Sukuna does not rock with bro. Does not rock with bro to the point where he genuinely wonders why he's even there half the time. Yeah. It's fantastic to see Yuji have reached a point where Sukuna is forced to respect him. Or at least, if not forced, respects him at all. Because he chooses to not tweak out until Yuji actively gets angry with him. And Sukuna is forced to get angry back. When Sukuna ends up being the target of pity, then he picks himself up by his britches and is like, okay, why I oughta, young man, make. He does that afterwards. He gives that time in order to do that, which is more than I could have ever expected from a man named Ryomen Sukuna when dealing with Yuji Itadori. So that, it's not just a part of my soul. It makes me happy to see that Sukuna does acknowledge Yuji. He sure looks grumpy the entire time, but still, the fact that Yuji has gained his respect in any way, shape, and form, beautiful. Once again, this chapter is full of evolved dynamics. This is part one. You can argue it shows up from the very first page when he actively asks Yuji the questions and isn't just ignoring him or trying to hit him anyway, considering clearly is in control of his own body right now. So that's great. But notice Sukuna corrected Yuji on the flowers, and Yuji even teased him a little bit. You know the names of flowers, huh? And we see Sukuna play it off. Must be Megami Fushiguro's memories. Oh, right. Then you should be familiar with this area from my memories. I don't access every single memory. Huh, right. Guess not. So, what does that reveal about Sukuna? Well, it reveals that he reviewed Megumi's memories. Okay. What does that reveal about Sukuna? Well, he viewed a non-necessary memory, as he himself admits. He doesn't get an automatic data dump. It seems like every incarnated sorcerer, even someone like Kenjaku, whenever he does his brain hopping technique, which is very different from incarnating as a sorcerer, he doesn't get a full, immediate access to all the information that they've ever experienced. Of course, it'd be a lot. Even for Suguna, who's been alive for who knows how long in his original lifespan, and I don't think he was conscious in the fingers for the 1,000 years. Then again, he doesn't mention it's been 1,000 years, so maybe he was. But still, he went out of his time to read Fushigoro's memory. What does Hydrangea have to do with the Ten Shadows? With Maharaga? With Morning Tiger? With Rabbit Escape? With, I don't know, the Divine Dogs? Nothing. But Sukuna read that memory, and then bothered enough to remember it for later, for himself, to correct the Yuji on it. The King of Curses. Strongest sorcerer in history. Could not care less about anything that is not his own pleasure or displeasure. When he remembered the name of a flower, and was insulted enough for the name of said flower, that he corrected Yuji Todori on it. That is a way of reminding us, as it's so easy to forget, that Ryomen Sukuna, despite how monstrous he is, despite how crazy he is, despite how mnemonic and down atrocious that boy is, he's still human. Fundamentally human. And human enough that something as minor as the name of a flower could actually matter to him. Matter enough that he would scan a 15-year-old boy's memories for the information on said flower. It's nice. It once again further humanizes Sukuna. And I think it's all to build towards the endpoint of this chapter. A big point about Sukuna is his humanity and how he feels about other people's humanity. He's clearly human. He clearly has thoughts about his own humanity. He clearly has looked into the mirror and recognized himself, and thusly knows that deep down, well, not even, probably not deep down, he just knows for a fact he's human. He's a sorcerer. He takes pride in the fact that he is a sorcerer, not a cursed spirit. Johnny Boy. In fact, who translated? Was this Johnny Boy? Gosh darn it, Johnny Boy. It was Johnny Boy. But with that being the case, he's human. He knows he's human. He knows he has humanity, and he knows he's not simply an incarnation or a monster or a manifestation of some aspect of fear for humanity. Remember this for later. But with it being the case, we see that Sukuna chose not to scan through Itadori's memories, but continues to go with him. And Itadori explains, "Oh, this park is far from my place, but there are crawfish. Here, try to catch one. Or can't the strongest sorcerer do this?" Silence. Sure. He tells Yuji to shut up now, but that's after Yuji did a whole bunch of yapping. He only gets agitated and tells Yuji to shut up once his pride is being challenged. It's the strongest sorcerer in history, the best at everything. And he takes the crawfish and fishes with Yuji anyway. And we see, ultimately, yours is stinky. And yours is an American crawfish. The Japanese kind is rare. Huh? What? Everything about this chat, it is a yap session. And I know some people don't like yap sessions, but like me, shock horror, I love a good yap session. So, Sukuna pulls out the bigger one. The thicker one. The juicier one. The more caked up, I'm kidding, it's crawfish, but the more caked up one. I shouldn't say it like that. The bigger one. But Yuji pulls out the rarer one. What does Sukuna care about the most? The size. The raw power, the strength. The grandiosity of it. He doesn't care about its specialty. He doesn't care about what it is. He just cares about how big it is, how mighty it is, how thick it is, how girthy. Let me stop. But Yuji pulls out a rarer one. I think mostly this plays into the idea that Sukuna is focused on the grander scheme, the large scale, the overall power. He's more of a macro kind of guy. Meanwhile, Yuji Todori is a person who sees the smaller things, sees the better things. Well, not the better things, but sees the things that are more specific, the more partial to a certain type of creature. And notices the fact that the one he pulled was, in fact, rarer. Come here, pencil, you can't hide from me. But with that being the case, remember that for later. Yuji is a person who can and will care about the little things, the unique things that make things better, even in spite of something else arguably being greater due to its size and commonality. And we see that Yuji continues to explain what happened to his hometown. They built this department store when I was 5. It ran all the smaller stores out of business. It sucked, but there is a movie theater on the top floor, so I guess I was fine with it. This town's pretty colorless, but there's a lot of greenery close by, so don't worry. What makes you think I care? Yuji's still giving Sukuna a tour. Sukuna is generally confused why he's getting a tour, and also wondering why Yuji thinks he cares, but Yuji's explaining how ultimately things can change, and things will change. Obviously, the loss of a lot of local businesses is bad, but Yuji got a movie theater out of it, so he's fine with it. Change is something that is inevitable, no matter what. Even as I sit here now, I am changing. I don't know how many of my cells die in a second, but there's a whole bunch of them. But many more are also being born. You may see things shutting down all around you, but new things are typically opening. Maybe not to the same rate as they're closing down, but things are always changing. The only time we could ever stop change is if we were to just stop time. But things keep on moving, and what you have to do is look for the good in what changes, even if there is sadness in what is lost from the change. And that's what Yuji's doing here, looking for the good, and not necessarily worrying too much about the bad, but acknowledging it as well. And of course, with the comment about the greenery, there's the idea that Yuji thinks that maybe Sukuna would care, especially after that comment about the flowers. There may be hope that there is something unique about Sukuna. There is something micro about Sukuna. There is some sort of care that he may somehow be able to attach himself to. Because, of course, that's what Yuji's trying to do. He's trying to attach himself to Sukuna in a literal, spiritual, and metaphorical way. But we see that they make it out to the edge of this town and see all the greenery. Look, green as far as the eye can see. I used to fill my bug case with grasshoppers from the rice fields, but you don't see them anymore. Maybe pesticides have improved. Once again, a further acknowledgement of change. A change that leads to the death of a certain hobby of Yuji's, but still, change. And that change could arguably be for the better, considering pesticides getting better means less of the rice is harmed by the grasshoppers. Less of the rice being harmed by the grasshoppers means more rice for other people. More rice for other people means more people get to eat. And eating is necessary. But with it being the case, we see that Sukuna says, he actually starts to say something as he goes ... Hey. But Yuji cuts him off. Wait a minute. There's another place I want to go. Wow! 2 horses. Once again, this is very interesting. There are living creatures in this place, but no other humans. They're the crawfish, they're the horses, and it doesn't seem like any of these things are frozen in time. It's not like they just reached in there and pulled out crawfish, or these horses are just stuck nuzzling against each other. No. There are living things here. Living things that react and move and breathe, but no people. And Yuji goes, wow! And gives his traumatic horse backstory. Aren't horses great? Their heads are always bigger than okay, not traumatic horse backstory, but their heads are always bigger than I remember. Gramps brought me to this farm sometimes. When I think about it now, he did a lot of stuff for me in place of my real parents. They serve soft serve ice cream here. The soft serve ice cream here was awesome. I'd blow my whole allowance on it. I'd blow my whole allowance on it. Eat too much and puke. So you always were a fool, huh? Hey, let's do some archery. Yuji is reflecting on the past. And reflecting on the good that was done for him by his grandfather. And also the weaknesses that he had. The willingness to spend everything, consume everything, only to... I understand that feeling. I've even done it recently, where you just eat for the sake of eating, dog, because it tastes good. You don't even worry about your stomach capacity until your stomach capacity gets up there. Luckily enough, I've never actually thrown up because of that. Like, I'll always stop myself. Though, admittedly, sometimes I've, like, eaten full and then gotten really, really thirsty because I didn't drink water with the meal. I drank, like, a juice, or, heavens forbid, a soda, and I'll grab this water, like, and then start drinking and then really fill up. But, luckily enough, I haven't launched it yet. But Yuji is still showing Sukuna different parts of himself, explaining how different people have had an effect on him and how that effect was good. And how he has had bad effects on himself of his own free will, of his own actions. Of course, not the worst bad effects. throwing up because he ate too much ice cream isn't too much of a bad thing, especially compared to what Yuji Todori has actually gone through as a character. But now the attention switches. Hey, let's do some archery. And once again, Sukuna, further reflecting on the fact that he now has some sort of respect for Yuji, does actually engage with archery. And does actually play with Yuji at his demand. And we see Yuji go, oof, golly gee willikers, man. You're no fun. Well, I have more experience at this. Oh, right. Back in the day, huh? Once again, Yuji Itadori is rationalizing with Ryomen Sukuna. And Ryomen Sukuna is admitting to his rationalizations. Yeah. Dude, I came from an era of archery. I learned. I engaged with that human art. One that he clearly didn't need. Sukuna likely had his technique all his life. Why would he need to learn archery? What is a bow and arrow doing that a dismantle can't? Dismantles may actually even be more accurate, considering they just fly straight. I don't think there's wind resistance on dismantles. I don't think they have drop speed. So, what does that mean? Why would Sukuna practice archery to the point where he's so good at it that he immediately gets a bullseye? Oh, because he's human, right? Because he knows he's human. And it's just a human thing to do. Pick up a passion. Get good at it. Maybe become the best at it. Why not? And you may be wondering, like, yo, pencil man. I know you like to yap, but why are you so focused on the idea that Sukuna's had passions, interests, outside of Jujutsu? Like, knowing flower names, doing archery, when he didn't need to do it. Well, I think it's because we don't know much about Sukuna. Remember, we don't even know his name. Ryomen Sukuna is a title. The King of Curses is a title. We don't know his name. We know little of his background. We don't know his mama. We don't know his daddy. We don't know why he was born the way he was. We don't even know how old he is, really. He's from the Han era, but did he live out a full human lifespan before being turned into fingers, or did he get turned into fingers well before the end of his full human lifespan? We don't know. So, learning things about Sukuna, which in my opinion has been kind of the entire Shinjuku Showdown itself, learning things about Sukuna, I think it's interesting to see that he did have interests, he did have passions, he did take the time out of his day to do things that intrigued him. Mainly because, for the most part, from what we knew of Sukuna up to this point, he was pretty stagnant. Sure, he had a cook that cooked up people real well for him, but that's it! That's kind of all we knew about his passions and his history. That in Jujutsu. And sure, that's interesting enough, unique enough. Most other characters can't really say that was in their line of interest. I think it's like him and Yorozu. But, even then, Yorozu's debatable, considering Yorozu wanted, like, cooked monkey brains. But, learning more about Sukuna like this, once again, reinforces the fact that he is a person. He is human. There is a backstory behind him. And I think that's important, because Sukuna's been so long characterized as a calamity. It's to the point where the more and more human that Sukuna becomes, the less and less believable that he is really a one-in-a-kind phenomena. That he is just born that way. No, it feels like maybe other people could become Sukuna. Not in the exact same way, sense or form, that they're going to be four-armed, two-faced monsters that consume people, but in the sense that every human could have the potential to just become Sukuna. A very, 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 very powerful sorcerer who happens to like other things. It's important because Sukuna is human. And we see Yuji mention, in the winter, they would display snow sculptures for the snow festival. I wonder if they still do that. It doesn't show much nowadays. It doesn't snow much nowadays. In Sendai either. Without snow, it never feels like winter. I love to shovel snow and then drink sweet milk tea while my hands were still numb from the cold. Gramps always looked disgusted. Yeah, your mouth will get sticky. Black coffee. I don't know. And funnily enough, fun fact about me, I actually don't like coffee. At least not to the same degree as I really should. Like, I'm a full-grown working adult who works a 9 to 5. Coffee should be my best friend, but I try my best not to drink it. One, because on the rare occasions that I do need to drink it, I would like it to be effective. I've heard from many of my other friends who are, I don't want to say addicted, but like, if you were to remove the bill that they spend on coffee, maybe a whole lot richer, let's just say that. But with it being the case, I heard it has diminishing returns, as anything that you repeatedly expose your body to does have diminishing returns for you. So I do drink it on occasion whenever I'm super duper tired. Like if I've stayed up to do a spoiler discussion and I dared to record the short form spoiler discussion, the long form spoiler discussion at the same time, and that's like 4 in the morning because I waited for the first one to export so I could upload it, and then I have work and I need to be up at like 3 hours later, then yeah, on a day like that I may drink coffee. But I've always been more of a sweets guy myself. Like, sweet tea was kind of my thing. That was my source of caffeine, especially when I was younger. I would just down the whole bottles of this stuff. And I've noticed that a lot of people tend to not like things such as that. And it's interesting, once again, to learn about Yuji, because as much as I've been talking about hammering home in this review that Sukuna is a person that we don't know much about, and it's interesting to learn what he was passionate about and what he did spend his time doing, the human side of him, is this really, dare I say, the first time we're learning more human stuff about Yuji, about his passions, about his tastes, about what he did when he was younger. We didn't know much about Yuji either. He was kind of just a dude. And sure, that's fine. Most MCs and narratives are just dudes. But to learn about Yuji's past, to learn about how he loved the snow, how he spent his time, to how he grew up in a town and watched it fade away upon his return, to see him contemplate his mortality. This is a shonen battle manga, y'all. And don't get me wrong, it's not an excuse to let the characters not go deep and actually learn a lot about them, but it's nice to see Yuji, a character who we've known since chapter 1, really be fleshed out as an individual with a past, a history. It's nice, because it's rare, and it's highlighting Yuji's humanity. Especially for Yuji, a character who, for a long time, even arguably before he fully accepted Mahito and said, I am you, and went down the whole Cog mentality path line, he's always been a person that's kind of been simple. Simple to follow. Simple to learn. Simple to read. And thusly, a person with a simple path. Once he consumed Sukuna, he had just resigned himself to death. That was his role. He was going to fight curses while he could, and then nibble on fingers, and then once it was all over, he was going to... Simple as that. He lived that way. So to see Yuji be reminded of his humanity and explain it to us, to actually get to hear it from the horse's mouth, as they say, it's nice. Because Yuji's a person too. Of course, he's not real, but still, it's good to feel and learn about him as if he were real. And we see, Yuji explains, one night, when it was almost Christmas, I thought I heard bells. But that really made me think that Santa truly existed. Later on, I realized it was snow chains that I heard. Whoops. But, look at that baby boy. Look at that sweet child. Little does he know what's going to happen to him in like 10 years. But still, look at that. Look at the purity. Look at the person there. It's so easy to forget that everybody that you see, everybody that exists, every single person you walk by on the street has history, has a backstory, is a person. It's even hard to consider for people you do know. Like, if you ever looked at your parents or your caregivers, they have a whole life before you and a whole life even with you existing. Beyond your purview. You'll never get into somebody else's head, as far as I know. Unless somebody on mine, you'll never get into somebody else's head. You'll never be able to see their memories. You'll never be able to understand exactly what they say, even if they explain it. I could perfectly explain to you how I felt 5 years ago on August 31st. And I could tell you. I couldn't, because I don't remember what I was doing 5 years ago on August 31st. But still, hypothetically, I could explain everything about a situation at a time and tell you exactly how I was feeling. But you'll still never fully understand that. Because you aren't me. That's fine. That's what makes us unique individuals. That's what makes us human. But, with that being the case, seeing Yuji lay it out bare, and seeing the importance of that, seeing that there is a person behind Yuji Todori, now one of the strongest sorcerers in history, it's nice. It's calming. It's human. This whole chapter is oddly calming. It comes after an intense storm upon a storm upon a storm upon a storm of chaos and malice and destruction and hatred and the loss of life. It feels so weird, doesn't it? We're talking about Yuji's history in the midst of the Shinjuku Showdown, where Gojo Satoru, Kashimo Hajime, Higuruma Hiromi, Kenchaku, possibly Taka. So many characters have fallen. So many characters have been cut and torn to ribbons and beat up. Choso burned out of my... Regardless, so much has happened. yet we're in this calmness. And then Sukuna finally, has enough and says, hey, enough of this. Okay, alright. That's pretty much everything I wanted to show you anyway. Yuji and Sukuna come to the end of this. Now, I'm going to break character a little bit. Instead of breaking down every individual little speech bubble, I'm going to just run through this entire little section right here, because I think it's very, very important for the enlightenment of Yuji Itadori, if we will. Okay, that's pretty much everything I want to show you. Talking like this gives me the creeps. What are you trying to say? Until recently, I'll be honest with you, I thought life was about understanding your role and trying to fulfill it. If I died doing that, then I could say I died a good death. But now, I don't think that's right. Just walking your dog and raising a family are also decent roles. And even if all you do is eat and poop or lie sick in bed or don't connect with anyone and end up leaving nothing behind, instead of memories giving form to your life, small fragments of memories are out there. Anyway, floating around and giving your life value. How someone dies doesn't matter, but I can't forgive someone who acts as if those lives are worthless. That's why I hate you, Sukuna. Human beings aren't tools. They don't come with a predetermined role. Good guys, bad guys, I don't care, nor do I really know which is truly human. Maybe I'm the one who's wrong, but I just wanted you to know this stuff. I wanted to show you the livelihood of people you see as having no value. Yuji Itadori has realized something fundamental. And it's something that is hard to come to terms with, especially in our type of society, or our type of world even. Everyone has roles, right? Like, no matter what. Some of them are, like, literally pre-baked into you. Like, one role I have is being my parents' child. They made me. There's nothing I can do to escape from that role. I'm stuck there, no matter what. I could skydive, I could, fist fight a bear, I could do whatever I want. But no matter what, as long as I exist, and even after I die, I am their child. That's a role I will never escape from. If I'm ever lucky enough to have kids, they're going to be stuck with the same role. And then my role will be different. I'm going to be their father. I could vanish off the face of the earth instantaneously. I could be like every anime protag dad ever and just immediately disappear at the start of their story. But no matter what, they're going to have my genetic code. They're going to be my kids. That's a role that ultimately is inescapable. But that's not my only role, right? Ultimately, this is a role. Hi, welcome to That Guy with a Pencil. This is a role that I play. I review, talk about, discuss, and yap for way too long about manga. It'd be like that when it be like that, especially when it be like that. But that's the thing. Unlike a role that is inescapable, I could stop right now. I could delete the video, I could go back and delete the entire show, but I don't choose to. I chose to undertake this role, and I enjoy it. I love it. I love the fact that I can do this, and I'm very passionate about it. But I also have another role at my full-time job that I go to Monday through Friday, every single day, 9 to 5. I need to fulfill that role too. And then I have the role to people that I'm friends with, who I need to talk to and interact with and maintain. There are so many different roles, so many different aspects. And ultimately, one thing that doesn't necessarily affect any of those roles, as Yuji says, is how I'm going to die. I could die right now, or any instant. Nothing is promised. It could be tomorrow. It could be 50 years from now. I don't know. Could be 100 years from now. Most likely not, but still, who knows? Never know. But none of that defines what I am now, what I do now. My hypothetical death doesn't necessarily matter, except for, my life insurance policy. I guess that's the only thing where my hypothetical immediate death would then immediately kick in. But that's it. That's all I got. It's really all I got. And Yuji has finally realized that ultimately, while one's death is important and it can have impact on others, it's not what defines you. So look at the three characters here. Noboru Kugisaki, Choso, and Gojo Satoru. All of these characters' deaths did have an impact on Yuji Tadori. Two of them broke his spirit for a moment. Nobara is the most heavily, Choso's the second most heavily, and even Satoru Gojo, while we didn't get to see Yuji's immediate reaction, we know it hurt him. But ultimately, none of them are really defined by their deaths. Nobara Kugisaki was a person. That's why we got her backstory right before she died. Choso was a person, a brother. That is the role that he chose and the role that he was defined by. Well, he didn't really choose to be a brother, but still. And Gojo Satoru was also not defined by his death. If anything, he was defined very, very well by the life he lived and the choices he made. And the fragments of memory, those pieces of their lives, have lodged themselves into Yuji Tadori and made them their own. Yuji Tadori is free now from the binds of death. Not literally, of course. Ryomen Sukuna could activate a domain expansion right now and slice Yuji to ribbons. Oh no, series over. But he's still not defined by that. Even the characters who are also mentioned here. Wasuke Itadori. Junpei. My brain is screaming Junpei Iori, but I'm pretty sure that's the Persona 3 character. I forget his other last. I forget this one's last name. And Nanami Kento. All characters who died. All died at various points in Yuji's life and have left behind pieces of themselves, fragments of memory. But ultimately, they were not defined by their deaths. They were defined by what they did in life. But ultimately, they all still had roles to play. Wasuke was a grandfather who ended up taking the role of parenthood, as Yuji acknowledges. Junpei was a son who ended up taking the role of really an unwitting fool in the plans of Mahito. Nanami Kento was a man who was a son who ultimately took up the role of sorcerer, took up the role of financier, and more and more and more, from teacher all the way to his end. But they are not defined by their ends, and ultimately the value that they left behind is all in Yuji and the many other people that they've touched with their lives. Yuji finally realizing that has freed him, in a sense, from the cog mentality, but it still plays a fundamental fact that he's going to acknowledge later, that he is free from the chains that he once thought bound his neck. As he says himself, humans are not tools. Unlike a pencil or a scissor or anything, even string, he is not defined by what he is capable of doing. He can choose what he does with what he is able to do. That is what is true. But ultimately, even as Yuji acknowledges what people are not defined by, he notices and respects and even puts heavy emphasis on the fact that he can never forgive those who believe that life is worthless, that lives of others are worthless, and can ruthlessly take them. He will never forgive Mahito. He will never forgive Sukune. He will hate them to the end of his days. I will never expect Yuji Tadori to turn around, even if he's 85 and rocking in a wheelchair, or whatever, rocking chair, and saying, maybe Mahito wasn't all that bad. Never would he say that. Now would he say that about Sukuna? Because he doesn't agree with them. And that's why Yuji finds himself in a rock, in a hard place, between the two, for better phrasing. Because ultimately, while Mahito's questionable, considering he's literally a curse, he is a curse born of humanity, and clearly had rational thought and capability like a human. And Ryomen Sukuna, despite his monstrous appearance, is a human. That's why Yuji doesn't know which is truly human, good guys or bad guys. He doesn't even know technically if he could qualify as a good guy. That was what the whole Mahito point was about. And I don't think Yuji's disregarding that development there. I think he's acknowledging a new layer to it, the complications that come with such. And the idea that, sure, there may not be any singular definition of what it means to be human. There may not be one singular definition of any person. But ultimately, he knows to some degree there is humanity within all of them. And he was hoping that in some way, maybe Sukuna just never understood that. He never had to. There was never a point where he needed to. And maybe by reaching his hand out to Sukuna, he could share a bit of this enlightenment, share the value of life, share that feeling that he has in regards to it, and maybe get Sukuna to possibly see the error of his ways. Maybe. Maybe. But this is Sukuna's response. Yeah, I don't feel anything. I understand the words you're saying, but they don't stir any emotion. Just like how you accepted this old dump of a town. I think, oh, so that's the case. But So what? Yuji, I've read that because someone in the I had a discussion video yesterday, and I talked about I voiced Sukuna in it, and I put pauses in there because I like the emphasis on the pauses better. Someone brought up the fantastic point. Sukuna's very self-assured. He wouldn't really pause. I don't like how I read that. I'm gonna go back and read it the old way that I read it in the video. Yeah, I don't feel anything. I understand the words you're saying, but they don't stir any emotion. Just like how you accepted this old dump of a town. I think, oh, so that's the case. But so what? It just doesn't matter to Sukuna. It doesn't. To go with the comparison I made in that discussion video, I can tell you all the numbers of pi that we know of to this point. And I say that we know of because the number it's a never-ending number. We're supposed to keep discovering numbers. And there's over let's just say I told you the 1,000 numbers of pi. What does that do to you? Anything, it may annoy you, because why did I waste your time listing the first 1,000 numbers of pi? 3.14, and then whatever. I forget the rest of it. I remember I had a whole school competition to memorize the whole thing. I didn't care. I didn't try. It didn't stir any emotion within me. That's how Sukuna feels about the lives of humans. About life in general. It doesn't matter to him. You know what does stir passion in him? Maybe? Something as simple and as clean as archery. That's likely why he went out of his way to learn it. What caught his fancy, caught his attention, maybe stirs him emotion enough for him to remember it? Oh, well, it may not have been any human life, but flowers and their names. That's what matters to him, because remember, Sukuna, as early as the first 30 chapters, is introduced as the Honored One. Someone who only cares about his pleasure and his displeasure. And thusly, humans don't really stir anything in him, neither do their lives. So it doesn't matter to him. He understands it. He's not dumb. He gets what Yuji's saying. And he won't always understand what humans say to him. He's a sentient creature. And he's so smart in Jujutsu, obviously he understands basic human communication. But it doesn't matter. Why would it? For my people out there who like to eat, aka everybody, since we need to do that to live, do you care? Not even in the macro sense of, oh, you eat meat? That's bad. And of course, there are reasons for that. There's actual health reasons. Apparently you shouldn't eat meat. That's not stopping me, though. I will gobble down an entire steak in minutes. Minutes? That's a lie. Literally, I've eaten whole swaths of steak in under a minute. I'm massively big back. I'm not gonna lie. But with that being the case, I don't necessarily care. But, stripping that down even further, for those who don't eat meat, but eat vegetables, you do realize those plants were alive, right? And they had to be taken away from where they were, so you could consume them. Whether it's an apple, whether it's a pear, whether it's lettuce. It was alive. It had life, and you're going to consume it and rid it of its life. Turn it into energy for you. Do you care about the grass you walk upon? Have you ever seen an insect in your room? Have you ever just slaughtered it? It had life. It was breathing. Doesn't matter to you, though. Doesn't stir any emotion in you. If anything, it annoys you. You slap it down. Because what did it have to do in my home? That's how Sukuna feels about people. About human lives. He understands they have value. Life innately does. Yeah, but it doesn't matter to him. It doesn't stir an emotion. That's still human, though. There are people who think like Sukuna. There are people who believe in isolation above all other things. Though, admittedly, I feel like Sukuna doesn't believe in isolation. That's one thing I don't agree with. I don't think Sukuna actually believes fully in isolation because he has Urume. He worked with Kenjaku. He nibbles on people. You can't be alone and nibble on people. But that aside, Sukuna is human. This whole chapter is a reflection of his humanity and pieces of it that we didn't know before. But it's his humanity that matters. His human nature that matters. The one that overrides all. For he's the strongest. What does the lives and the strength or lack thereof of others bother him for? So what? It is a twisted disposition to live by to a certain degree, but many, many, many people think like that. Heck, I even think like that from time to time, in a weird, grand sense. There are many people, as I record this right now, who are in pain, who are in agony, who are suffering beyond belief, physically, mentally, psychologically, spiritually. So what? I'm still going to record the video. Still going to hopping into the editing software. Make sure it works. Sit back, chillax, maybe take a nap a little bit. I'm actually a little tired, a little sleepy, actually a little hungry. May eat a lot of exports. Why? Because again, that's my life, so I'm going to do what I want with it. That's what Sukuna is, but taken to the utmost level. He couldn't care less, because it doesn't stir any emotion in him. And I like that. Sukuna is a human taken to its extremes. And I say a human, because once again, we don't even know his name. But that does lead to something. And it does go to show that Yuji Todori may know a little bit more than what he was letting on, may understand a little bit more than what Sukuna thinks, and may just be a bit smarter than the boy we gave him credit for. Just as I expected, it's no use. It's no use! Sorry, the 06 Silver broke out. I gotta say, I'm astounded by how spineless you are. Are your anger and hatred towards me really so piddling? Note the reaction. Sukuna declares this, as Yuji looks down, not even looking Sukuna in the eyes. And then Sukuna realizes, all of this does seem strange, doesn't it? The calmness, the serenity. This is a sure hit domain. At least it should be. That's what the last chapter highlighted this place to be. Or at least what Yuji attempted to do. As he mentioned at the start of the chapter, he did a Hail Mary in the middle of Mortal Kombat. He didn't know what was going to happen, he just did it. But doesn't it seem weird? Why? Of all times, after Choso was just burnt to a crisp, you just watch Toto, his other brother, get slammed down through the angel, both possibly dead. Maki, he doesn't know the whereabouts of. Miwa, he's hoping is alive. All the characters who were there, he's hoping just somehow manage to survive. Sukuna's level and shrine. Kashimo, who Yuji didn't care too much about, is dead. Higuruma, who Yuji did care a decent bit about, is dead. Gojo Sato, who's dead. Yuji Okkotsu is possibly dying. Like, what does this matter? Why is it happening now? What's going on? Why does Yuji seem so calm? Why is his anger and hatred coming up to a lecture? What's the point? But then, Yuji's enlightenment is fully revealed. As an enlightened one is meant to not just be enlightened, but also guide others to it. So, Sukuna then realizes why he's being put in the situation. This isn't a manifestation of Yuji's rage, or hatred, or malice, anything. No. It's a manifestation of Yuji's pity. Yuji feels bad for Sukuna. Because, yeah, Sukuna understands it all, but he doesn't feel anything. Oh, so Sukuna must be empty. And that's a sad way to live, isn't it? There are people who do work well in isolation. Heck, to a certain degree, I do. Despite being a very, very social person, if you couldn't tell, I really like to yap. I understand being in silence. The peace of it, the beauty of it. I love it from time to time. They're some of the best days I can remember. And when I just woke up, videos were pre-recorded, and I was vibing, and I lay back, I just rotted. Just sat there and enjoyed being alive. But I do think that if I didn't have the ability to connect with others, if I didn't have the capability to see the value behind every person and be willing to open myself up to that, I'm actually shocked to say I would feel pretty empty. A lack of connection can only go so far. Humans are social creatures. That would literally be going fundamentally against my nature. It's why I'm happy I have friends. People I can call friends. People I can connect, a family. I do like that, and I care for that deeply. And Yuji realizes that Sukuna doesn't have that. Not a bit of it. Not an iota. And he realizes that that's kind of sad. And Sukuna now realizes that he hasn't been experiencing Yuji's hatred. He's been patronized, talked down to, almost like a child. Boy, could it be that you pity me? Are you trying to be merciful? And note how there is a statue of what I believe is the Buddha shown here. But it's at a crooked angle. Because I don't think Yuji's reached a perfect enlightenment. I really don't think so. But I do think he's reached a peak. Just as Sukuna spent a whole bunch of time looking down, now Yuji is looking down on Sukuna. Enough to pity him. Enough to show him some mercy. And we see that Yuji reveals that, oh, of course, just as in the Journey to the West, before Sun Wukong at the end reaches enlightenment himself, the Buddha could have simply squashed him in his hand and destroyed Sun Wukong entirely. Though admittedly, there's like the 4 sacred primates, which makes that kind of weird, but still, regardless, the ability was there the entire time, but Buddha decided to show Sun Wukong a bit of mercy and allow Tripitaka to come on the journey to the West to allow Sun Wukong to reach enlightenment, because it is the journey and the necessity of the Buddha to guide others to it, not simply leave those behind or crush them. Yuji reveals, that's right, Sukuna, I can kill you. Free Fushiguro. I'll spare you if you return to me. Yuji's reached that peak. He has Sukuna at his mercy. He's become strong enough and understands that he's become strong enough that he can make this demand. Not a request, but an offer, a binding vow. He can do that. But of course, Yuji isn't the only one to have reached a form of enlightenment. Just as he himself now may represent a crooked Buddha, so does the original, the one who achieved a point where the narrator itself would call him the Honored One. You're sorely mistaken. I'll tear you asunder, boy, and then, before your severed head, I'll kill all those humans you prize so much. Sukuna is furious, because Sukuna's likely never been talked down to, at least not in a way that seemed to matter at all. And in a way, this is truly extra disrespectful, because in a way, Sukuna was showing Yuji mercy by deciding to not tweak out immediately when put in this scenario, and actually deciding to hear him out for whatever reason. So to find out it was not an act of desperation, but an act of pity from someone who believes himself greater than the king. Of course, the undeniable rage that Sukuna would feel at such an act only makes sense, because Sukuna's human. And trust me, the higher someone rises as a human, the farther and farther they are from the ground. And the more and more they would hate the idea of someone rising up from the ground to either make them fall, or to even challenge their supremacy. So let this be the ultimate example, that Ryomen Sukuna, the nameless king of curses, is a pitiable man, but ultimately still human. What a worthy chapter indeed. However, that is what I think. If you somehow made it all the way to the end of this chunker of a video, I don't know. I know I need to cut out some stuff, but currently I'm looking at the recording timer. It's been an hour and 40 minutes, which scares me. But I'm assuming this video will probably be a bit over an hour. Please, do me a favor and leave the crooked... Leave Twin Peaks. I know that's is that a reference to like a TV show, or is that a reference to a fake TV show? I forget. Leave Twin Peaks. Twin as in 2 twins, and peaks as in like the peaks of a mountain, in the comment section down below. I'd like to thank you so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. And make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do happen to have a Patreon below where you can support me for as low as $1 a month. Links like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Some of those perks include the live reaction to this very chapter, and free variations of all my videos, and if you become a $25 patron or a $25 member, you can order whatever video you want. Also, I do have a link to my Ko-Fi in the description down below, where you can drop 5 beans for a short video, 25 beans for a long video, or any beans at all. Any support is always greatly appreciated. Now, I'd like to thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Other Pencil, writing off. I'd like to thank you to our $3 members: Zena, Greyhound, Astro, Eternal Flame, NMA, Real Rare, G Prosper, Red Wolf 4765, and Paris Arnold. I'd like to leave another big ol' thank you to our $5 patrons: Sean, Sammy, Midnight Lord 21, Kevin Encarnacion, Josh Brown, and A+A. And I'd like to give a great big thank you to our $7 members: Autumn Mornings Lazo, Fine, and That Guy.
And I'd like to give a great big thank you to our $10 members, Robbie Uchiha, Jay Warrior, and Akids Void. And I'd like to give big, hefty, juicy thank yous to our $10 patrons, Panda Goat, Michael Williamson, Metal Solid Crisis, Joaquin Munoz, and Idemo Kami. And I'd like to give the biggest, juiciest, meatiest, sloppiest, and heftiest thank you of them all to our $25 patron, Calvin Elder.